Welcome to my channel Spook Eyes Stories. The deeper I went into Australia's abandoned tunnels, the more I realized how unprepared I truly was. These places look silent from the outside, but inside, it feels like someone is watching every step you take. Cold air, footsteps that don't match yours, voices whispering your name when no one is there. I didn't expect these tunnels to affect me this deeply, but some moments still replay in my head at night. Today, I'm sharing the 10 tunnels that genuinely shook me, the ones where fear doesn't come from shadows, but from what you feel standing right beside you. If you're enjoying this journey with me, make sure to like the video and subscribe to the channel. It really helps me keep exploring these terrifying places for you. 1 Mushroom Tunnel, Red Bank Range Railway Tunnel, Picton, NSW. The first time I walked toward the Mushroom Tunnel in Picton, I honestly didn't expect much. I had heard stories before, about soldiers, about the old railway line, and about strange things people claimed to see inside, but I thought most of it was just exaggeration. Still, the moment I stepped near the entrance, something in the air felt heavier than it should have. It wasn't fear exactly, just a strange pressure, like the tunnel was holding its breath. The floor was cold and wet, and every sound echoed back at me in a way I couldn't fully understand. I kept telling myself it was just the shape of the tunnel, but a few steps in, I started hearing this slow dripping sound. It felt too close, almost like someone was walking barefoot behind me, but when I turned around, the entrance was completely empty. The sunlight outside looked much farther away than it actually was. I kept moving, because honestly, I didn't want to turn back yet. I wanted to know why so many people talked about this place like it was alive. And then it happened. I heard a breath. Not mine. A real, deep exhale, just beside my left ear. I froze. I didn't run, because for a second, I genuinely thought maybe someone else had entered behind me. But the tunnel was silent again, except for that dripping sound that suddenly seemed louder. I tried to shake it off and kept walking deeper. The further I went, the colder it became, even though outside it was a warm afternoon. My phone flashlight barely cut through the darkness. Halfway through, I noticed something I still can't explain, the sound of footsteps ahead of me, steady and slow. They didn't echo like mine. They sounded like they belonged to someone standing on dry ground, but the whole tunnel was wet. I called out, "Hello," and my voice came back to me, but the footsteps didn't stop. They got closer. Slow. Heavy. Real. I felt my chest tighten in a way I've never felt before. Not panic, something deeper. Like I wasn't supposed to be there. And then I saw it. Not a full figure, just the shape of someone standing just beyond the beam of my light. Tall. Still. Watching me. When I blinked, it wasn't there anymore, but the feeling that someone had just stepped aside to let me pass stayed with me. I didn't run, but I walked out faster than I want to admit. When I reached the entrance again, the air felt warm and normal, and I finally realized how cold my hands had become. I don't know what I saw in that tunnel. But I know what I felt. Someone else was in there with me. And whoever it was, they never wanted to be seen. 2 Princes Park Mulgrave Battery Tunnel System, Hobart, TAS. I remember the day I first walked into the tunnels beneath Princes Park in Hobart. I had visited old forts and abandoned military sites before, but something about the Mulgrave Battery tunnels felt different from the moment I stepped near the entrance. The air was cold in a way that didn't match the weather outside. It was a quiet afternoon, and the whole park was empty except for a couple of tourists far away. I thought it would be just another history spot. I was wrong. As soon as I ducked into the tunnel, the sound changed instantly. Outside I could hear birds, distant traffic, and the wind. Inside, everything went silent in a way that felt unnatural, like the tunnel swallowed every noise. The air smelled like old stone and rust. I kept moving deeper, my hand brushing the cold walls that soldiers once stood beside more than 100 years ago. For a moment, it actually felt peaceful, until I heard something behind me. It was a single metallic clang. Not loud, but sharp enough to make my whole body freeze. I knew no one else had entered after me. I turned around and waited, trying to convince myself it was just old metal shifting. But the sound didn't echo like a falling object, it sounded like someone had hit a piece of metal deliberately. I kept walking, though every part of me wanted to turn back. The deeper I went, the colder it became. My breath started to fog in front of me even though outside the temperature was normal. That's when I noticed the whisper. It wasn't a word, just a low, breathy sound coming from the dark section ahead of me. At first, I thought it was wind moving through a crack somewhere, but the tunnel was too deep and sealed for wind. The whisper came again, closer this time. I lifted my phone to check the time, and for a split second, the camera reflected something behind me. It looked like a faint shadow of a man standing near the wall, tall, stiff, like someone in an old uniform. When I spun around, there was nothing there. But the feeling that someone had been right behind me didn't go away. My heartbeat felt loud in my ears. I walked back slowly, trying not to make any sudden moves. Every few steps, I felt like someone was matching my pace, just far enough that I couldn't hear them clearly. The moment I stepped out into the daylight again, the temperature jumped instantly. My breath stopped fogging. The whispering stopped. I don't know who or what stayed behind in those tunnels, but I do know one thing. Something down there still remembers the soldiers who never left. 3 Port Kembla / Hill 60 Tunnels and Military Works, Illawarra, NSW. I didn't plan on staying long when I visited the Hill 60 tunnels in Port Kembla. I just wanted to see the old World War II bunkers, maybe take a few photos, and leave before sunset. But the moment I walked into the first narrow passage, I felt something I wasn't prepared for. It was the kind of silence that doesn't feel empty, it feels watched. The air was damp, cold, and heavy, carrying that old concrete smell you only find in abandoned military places. I moved slowly through the tunnel, my footsteps echoing in short, sharp rhythms. Every sound felt closer than it should. I kept imagining soldiers standing here decades ago, waiting, watching the coastline, listening for danger. Maybe that's why the place still feels tense, like something from the past hasn't settled. I reached a section where the tunnel splits into two. I stood there for a moment, trying to decide which way to go, when I heard something from the left side, just a soft scrape, like a boot sliding on concrete. My first thought was that someone else might be exploring, so I called out, "Hello? Anyone there?" My voice bounced off the walls and came back to me in a way that didn't feel natural. No answer. Just that same cold, heavy air. I walked toward the left passage anyway, but with every step, my chest felt tighter. The walls felt closer. The tunnel seemed darker than the others. Then I heard breathing. Not my breathing, someone else's. Slow, steady, controlled. The kind of breath a trained soldier makes when he's trying not to be heard. I froze. My flashlight trembled in my hand. The breathing grew louder for maybe 3 seconds, and then it stopped completely, like whoever it was had realized I detected them. I whispered, "Who's there?" No reply. Just silence so deep it almost rang in my ears. I backed up slowly, not turning my back on the darkness. When I reached the main corridor again, the temperature changed instantly, it felt warmer, lighter, as if I had stepped out of someone's presence. I was almost at the exit when something made me stop. On the wall near the doorway, above an old rusted metal plate, there was a handprint in the dust. A large one. Fresh. Clear enough that you could see the spread of the fingers. I placed my hand next to it, mine was much smaller. And I had walked through that area earlier. There was no handprint then. I left the tunnel without looking back. Even now, when I think about Hill 60, I don't think about ghosts. I think about who, or what, was still patrolling down there long after the war ended. For Bulai/South Coast Tunnel Stories, NSW. I didn't grow up hearing much about the old tunnels near Bulai. People talked about the mines, the tragedies, the history, but not the tunnels themselves. So when I finally decided to explore one of the abandoned sections with a friend, I treated it like a normal adventure. I had no idea how heavy the place would feel once we stepped inside. The entrance wasn't impressive, just a dark opening hidden behind overgrown bushes, but the moment we crossed it, the temperature dropped sharply. My friend joked that it was just underground air, but I could feel something else. It was the kind of cold that feels aware of you. We moved slowly, our footsteps crunching on the damp gravel. The deeper we went, the stronger the smell became: old earth, coal dust, and that strange metallic scent you can't quite describe. I kept thinking about the miners who used to walk the same path every day. Many never made it out. That thought alone made my chest feel tight. Around 15 minutes in, the tunnel shifted from wide to narrow. The ceiling dropped lower, and the walls felt like they were closing in. My friend was ahead of me, his flashlight creating long shadows that moved strangely across the stone. I remember asking him to wait a second because I suddenly felt like someone was behind us. Not close, just following at a distance. When I turned around, the tunnel stretched into darkness. Nothing unusual. But I couldn't shake the feeling that something was standing just outside the reach of the light. Watching. We kept going until we reached an old bricked-off section. While my friend was taking photos, I heard something behind the wall. A single knock. Slow. Deliberate. I thought maybe it was water or shifting stone, but then it happened again, 3 knocks, evenly spaced, like someone trying to get attention from the other side. My friend heard it too. He froze, staring at the wall with his mouth slightly open. Before either of us could speak, we heard footsteps behind us. Clear, heavy footsteps. The kind a man wearing boots would make on hard ground. But there was no one there. And the sound didn't echo right, it sounded like the footsteps belonged to someone walking on solid, dry floor, even though the tunnel was wet. We didn't run, but we walked out faster than we've ever walked in our lives. The moment we stepped outside, the air felt normal again, warm, open, safe. Neither of us talked much about that day now. But every time I think about those knocks, I wonder if they were from someone who never got the chance to leave that tunnel long ago. 5 Zigzag Railway Tunnels, Lithgow, NSW. I had heard about the zigzag tunnels for years, mostly from people who loved trains, history, or photography. Hardly anyone around me talked about the strange things that happened there. So when I finally visited the Lithgow area, I decided to explore one of the abandoned sections alone, thinking it would just be another quiet location with old stonework and echoes. But from the moment I walked inside, the tunnel didn't feel empty at all. The air was thick and cool, even though outside the day was warm. My footsteps echoed in a slow, uneven rhythm that felt like it didn't match the beat of my walking. Every few steps, the echo came back delayed, almost like someone else was walking after me a moment later. I tried to convince myself it was just the acoustics, but something about it felt personal. The deeper I went, the darker it became. My flashlight barely reached the end of the corridor ahead. Somewhere behind me, I heard what sounded like gravel shifting under a boot. I stopped immediately, listening. The sound stopped too. I told myself it was probably water dripping onto loose stones, but when I took another step, I heard it again, like someone adjusting their weight. Halfway through the tunnel, I reached one of the widened sections where trains once changed direction. The walls here were covered with soot, and the air felt heavier. I stood quietly for a few seconds, just listening, and that's when I heard it, a whistle. Old, soft, distant, like a conductor signaling a train. I froze. No one was outside. There were no trains running. And everyone in town said that whistle hasn't been heard in decades. I moved forward slowly, my heart pounding harder with every step. Then my flashlight flickered, not off, just weak for a second, as if something passed right in front of it. At the same moment, a cold breeze slid across my left arm. The tunnel had no open vents. No wind. Nothing that could cause a sudden chill like that. Just before I turned back, I saw a shape at the far end of the tunnel. Not a full person, just a shadow, tall and still, standing perfectly centered on the tracks. When I blinked, it was gone. But the feeling that someone had been waiting there, that stayed. I walked out quietly, not daring to look behind me again. And when I finally stepped back into the sun, it felt like I had left a different world, one where echoes weren't just echoes, and shadows didn't always belong to you. 6 Swan View Tunnel, Swan View, WA. The first time I walked toward the entrance of Swan View Tunnel, I felt something I still can't fully explain. The tunnel isn't huge or dramatic from the outside, just a dark opening carved into a sandstone hill, but the closer I stepped, the more it felt like the whole place was holding its breath. Locals had warned me that people hear strange footsteps inside and sometimes feel something brushing past them in the dark. But I honestly thought it was just one of those exaggerated ghost stories. I realized how wrong I was the moment I stepped inside. The temperature dropped so suddenly it felt like I had walked into a refrigerator. My breath floated white in the air. I remember placing my hand on the tunnel wall just to steady myself, and the stone felt damp, almost like something had been breathing against it moments earlier. The echo of my own footsteps bounced around strangely, like the sound wasn't coming from me but from someone walking just behind. About 20 meters in, I switched off my flashlight for a few seconds just to feel the atmosphere. That was a mistake. In the pitch-black darkness, I heard a single, sharp clink, like a metal tool hitting a rail. It sounded too clear, too close. I turned the light back on instantly and whispered to myself, "It's just old metal shifting, relax." But deep inside, I knew it didn't feel natural. As I walked further, the tunnel suddenly filled with the smell of smoke. Not a faint hint, full, heavy smoke, like someone was burning old timber right in front of me. I coughed and waved my hand through the air, but the strange thing was, there was no haze. Just the smell. I remembered the old story about the worker who died here when an explosive malfunctioned during railway construction. People say sometimes the scent of smoke appears out of nowhere, exactly where he died. Just when I decided to turn back, I felt something rush past my left side, fast, cold, and silent. My jacket moved like someone had brushed against me. The tunnel was empty. My heart hammered so hard I could hear it echoing off the walls. But the moment that truly shook me happened right before I left. As I stepped back toward daylight, a faint voice echoed from deep behind me, just one word, whispered like someone standing inches from my neck. "Wait." I didn't look back. And when I reached outside, the warm sunlight felt unreal, like I had stepped out of another world entirely. Even today, Swan View Tunnel feels less like an abandoned railway passage and more like a place where memories, and something else, are still alive. 7 Woy Woy Tunnel, Central Coast, NSW. I had heard so many strange stories about Woy Woy Tunnel that I finally decided to see it myself, even though locals kept telling me, that tunnel has a darkness you don't want to understand. I thought they were exaggerating. But the moment I reached the entrance, I understood why people avoided it even in daylight. The entire tunnel seemed to breathe, like a long, silent mouth waiting for someone to step inside. As soon as I entered, a thick, cold air washed over me. I remember checking my phone flashlight twice, making sure it wouldn't die on me because the darkness inside felt alive. The walls were stained from decades of train smoke, but some marks looked newer, like long, thin scratches dragged along the stone. I tried not to think about them. About 50 meters in, I heard something I still struggle to describe. It wasn't footsteps, not exactly. It was more like someone dragging a boot along the ground behind me, slowly and rhythmically. I stopped walking, held my breath, and the dragging sound stopped too. When I moved again, it started once more. I whispered, "It's just sound echoing," but even I didn't believe it. The deeper I went, the heavier the air became. It felt like pressure on my chest. Train drivers have reported seeing shadowy figures inside the tunnel late at night, and I suddenly understood how easily someone could mistake those shadows for real people. The darkness here doesn't just exist, it moves. Halfway through, I saw a faint light flicker near the far end of the tunnel. At first I thought it was another person with a torch, so I called out, "Hey, is someone there?" The light blinked once, then vanished completely. That's when I felt the first touch. Something cold brushed the back of my hand, light, but deliberate. Like a fingertip. My body froze. I turned the light toward my hand, but nothing was there. My heart was pounding so loud it felt like it filled the tunnel. Then came the whisper. Not a word, not a voice, just a breath, right beside my left ear. Soft, slow, and unmistakably human. I spun around, but the beam of my light showed only the empty darkness stretching behind me. Yet I felt watched, closely, like something was standing inches away but just out of sight. I walked out quickly, refusing to look back even once. When I finally stepped into daylight, my knees were shaking so badly I had to sit down. Even now, whenever I remember that breath against my ear, I know one thing for sure: whatever haunts Woy Woy Tunnel doesn't want to be seen, it wants to be felt. 8. Victoria Park Normanby Tunnel, Brisbane, QLD. The first time I walked toward the old Normanby Tunnel in Victoria Park, I felt this strange tension in my stomach, like I was approaching a place that didn't want visitors. The tunnel isn't very long, but the atmosphere around it feels wrong the moment you step close. Even the trees near the entrance seem to lean away from it, their branches twisted like they've been growing while trying to avoid something inside. As I approached the entrance, a cold wave hit me. Brisbane evenings are warm, so the temperature shift felt unnatural. The inside looked like a perfect black corridor, and I remember hesitating for a moment before stepping in. The sound changed instantly. Outside, I could hear traffic and voices from the nearby road, but inside, everything went flat and hollow. Every step echoed strangely, not forward, but sideways, like the tunnel had hidden pockets of space. About 10 meters in, I saw graffiti layers on the walls. Most were old tags, but one message looked disturbingly fresh: "Don't listen to them." I laughed nervously and tried to shake off the tension, but deep down I knew something wasn't right. The air was thick and had that old, dusty smell, like a place that had been sealed for decades. Then I heard the first sound: soft footsteps. Not mine. They were light and quick, like someone walking barefoot on damp concrete. They came from the far end of the tunnel, even though I could see with my flashlight that no one was there. I took a deep breath and kept walking, telling myself it was water dripping or sound bouncing weirdly. But then the footsteps stopped, and a whisper followed. It was faint, but clear enough that I froze completely. It sounded like a woman's voice, low and shaky, saying something I couldn't understand. The sound wasn't ahead of me, it was right behind my right shoulder. I spun around so fast my light shook, but there was only empty tunnel. My heartbeat was so loud it felt like it was echoing. I tried to walk faster, but the air ahead of me grew colder. My fingers felt numb, and every few seconds I caught something moving just at the edge of my light, tiny shadows sliding along the wall like they were avoiding being seen. Near the exit, something happened that still gives me chills. My flashlight flickered, and in that split second of darkness, I felt a hand grab the back of my jacket, not hard, but enough to stop me mid-step. When the light came back, nothing was there, but I didn't wait. I ran out of the tunnel as fast as I could. Outside, the warmth hit me instantly, but the feeling of that cold hand stayed with me long after. Some places hold memories, but Normanby Tunnel feels like it holds something alive, something waiting, and something that definitely knew I was there. 9 Helensburgh Railway/Coal Tunnels, near Royal National Park, NSW. I reached the Helensburgh tunnels just before sunset, thinking I had plenty of time before darkness settled in. But something about this place makes the light disappear faster, like the tunnels swallow it before the evening even begins. The entrance looked beautiful from afar, covered in green moss, dripping water, and surrounded by thick trees, but the closer I got, the heavier the air felt. It was like walking into a story I wasn't supposed to hear. Everyone talks about the glow worms here, how magical they look at night. But locals also whisper about the shadows that move without light, about voices that echo even when the tunnels are empty. I didn't believe any of it until that day. When I stepped inside, the smell hit me first, a mix of wet stone, rusted metal, and something older, almost like burnt coal. The floor was slippery, and my footsteps sounded too loud, as if someone else was matching them a second later, just slightly out of sync. The tunnel stretched ahead like a long, damp throat, and each breath I took felt colder than the last. About 30 meters in, the faint blue lights of glow worms started appearing above me. It should have felt peaceful, but instead it felt like they were lighting up something I wasn't meant to see. A soft dripping sound echoed somewhere deeper inside, steady and slow, until suddenly, it wasn't steady anymore. The rhythm changed, fast, then slow, then fast again, almost like footsteps approaching through water. I raised my flashlight and called out, "Hello? Anyone there?" My voice came back broken, like the tunnel didn't want to return it properly. Then, behind me, I heard a low breath, soft but close enough that the hairs on my neck lifted. I spun around instantly, but all I saw was the faint blue glow above me. The silence that followed felt almost intentional. As I moved further, the temperature dropped sharply. My fingers went numb, and my breath fogged in the air. Suddenly, the tunnel ahead of me flashed with a quick burst of light, white, bright, and gone in a split second. It looked like the spark of an old miner's lamp. I stepped back, heart racing, remembering the story of the miner who died in a collapse here, his lamp later found still burning under the rock. Then it happened. A shadow moved across the wall, human-shaped, slow, steady, and definitely not mine. It walked along the tunnel wall like someone passing silently just out of reach. My chest tightened, and every instinct screamed at me to leave. As I turned to go, a cold voice, so close it felt like it brushed my ear, whispered a single word. "Stay." I didn't. I ran toward the entrance, slipping, stumbling, not daring to look back. Even outside, under the open sky, the tunnel behind me seemed to watch. Helensburgh looks beautiful in photos. But inside, it feels like the past is still walking, and sometimes, it walks right beside you. 10 Lilydale Train Tunnel, Tasmania. I arrived at the abandoned Lilydale train tunnel on a cold, cloudy afternoon, the kind of weather that makes everything feel a little heavier. I had seen photos of the place, moss-covered walls, a dark arched mouth carved into the hillside, but nothing prepared me for how silent the area felt in real life. Not peaceful silence, more like the world holding its breath, waiting. The closer I got, the more unsettling it became. The tunnel didn't look empty. It looked watchful. The entrance was dripping with water, long streaks running down like tears. I stood there for a moment, just listening. No birds. No wind. Nothing. Only the faint echo of something deep inside, like a soft tap every few seconds. I told myself it was water dripping. But the rhythm didn't match the sound of water. I stepped in anyway. The temperature dropped immediately, sharper than it had in any of the other tunnels I've explored. The air had that old metallic smell, mixed with damp earth and something else, something sour, like old smoke. My footsteps echoed in uneven patterns, bouncing back at me from strange angles. It felt like someone else was walking out of sync, a single step behind. About halfway in, the darkness thickened. My flashlight beam faded strangely at the edges, as if the tunnel was swallowing the light. The walls were covered in old soot marks from decades ago, but some of the streaks looked fresh, sliding down like something had dragged its fingers through the grime. Then I heard it, clear as day. A footstep. Not mine. Not an echo. A real, solid footstep right behind me. I spun around so fast my light shook, but the tunnel behind me was totally empty. Yet I could feel something there, the way you can sense someone standing close even when you can't see them. My heartbeat thudded loudly, almost painful inside my chest. I took a slow step backward, and something moved in the corner of my vision. A flicker of pale light, like an old lantern swinging in someone's hand deep down the tunnel. The stories about the old rail worker who died here flashed in my mind. People said his lantern was seen long after the tracks were removed. The light flickered again, then vanished completely. That's when the whisper came. A dry, broken voice from the darkness in front of me saying, "Don't go." My whole body froze. The voice didn't sound angry. It sounded tired. Desperate. But every instinct screamed at me to move. I turned and walked fast toward the entrance, but just before stepping into daylight, something cold brushed the back of my arm, like fingertips. Outside, the air felt warmer, safer, normal. But when I looked back, the tunnel looked darker than before, like it had closed itself behind me. Lilydale Tunnel might be abandoned. But something inside it definitely isn't alone.